Outside the college football playoff, probably the most marquee matchup in regards to name brands in college football, the Cotton Bowl. It's Oklahoma, it's Florida. We got Jackie Franchuli on the line from, of course, allgators.com on SI. Jackie, how we doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for joining us. So, Cotton Bowl selection after the SEC championship game loss. This was the team that, after losing to LSU, wasn't given a shot by almost anyone to compete with Alabama. They made a lot of defensive mistakes in the first half that had nothing to do with Alabama's prolific offense, just flat out mistakes on critical third down that gave Alabama better down and distance, or just flat out converted third downs into first downs. And then, of course, the clock management issue at the end of the first half. But all in all, they got it to within 4, gave them a game. Your thoughts about the Gators' play against Bama?
I think this game just illustrated how far this Florida team has come in the last few years. Remember, the last time they were in the SEC championship game, they were destroyed by Alabama. So this has shown how far along Dan Mullen has brought the program. It's also showed what it would take for Florida to get to a position where they are Alabama, or at least close to prestige talent and close to winning an SEC title. They need to obviously recruit better so they can add more depth, and that's something that Alabama has done fantastically well. But the other thing is, you have to play nearly a perfect game in order to beat a team that is coached by Nick Saban at the talent level that Alabama played. And we've seen that, Florida left a few things on the field. The offense didn't have the most perfect game. We saw that. And the defense did leave a lot of time, a lot of points on the field as well. When you think about it, Trey Dean had that interception and then got hit and then fumbled the ball. And then there was penalties on third downs, like you said. So there was all these missed opportunities on the defense. There was missed opportunity on the offense. And then even in the coaching, you questioned a few of the play calls of they were very adamant in starting that run game in that first half a couple of times. And you question yourself, why are you running the ball when you're, when you have such a long way to go in certain times when they were second and long. And then sometimes you also question, again, the clock management at the end of the half. Why did you give that much time to Alabama? What happens if you hold on to the ball a couple more seconds? Maybe Alabama doesn't score. It's a different game coming in the second half, especially because Florida is a second half team. Florida has done really well in the second half, and the defense has done quite well adjusting in the second half. They're usually really sluggish. And in the second half, they usually come out a little bit different. But it also demonstrated a few things on the defense that they do need to get better. Now, I will say that there were a couple of players on that defense, like Brad Stewart and Zach Carter, that did play very well against Alabama. I think it showed that Florida has a couple of weapons on that offense, like Jacob Copeland, like Kadarius Toney, like Kyle Pitts, all that have shown how far they've developed. And obviously Kyle Trask showed that, he did well leading this team back from, all those mistakes. He had a couple of good leadership moments. And honestly, it was the most emotional I've seen him in a post-game presser. You can just tell that he was hurt after the game. I think we learned a lot from the team. And I think we learned how much more this team needs to do to get better. Last year, Dan Mullen said that they were 7 points behind Georgia. And I think you can say the same thing here. They beat Georgia now, and they're just a couple points behind Alabama. It's just now you have to consider that a lot of these players that had some sort of contribution were also part of the former staff's recruiting class. You have Kyle Trask. You have Kadarius Toney. You have Trey Grimes. Oh, Trey Grimes was actually a transfer guy, so not him. But you have Jacob Copeland. You have on defense, you have Zach Carter, you have Kyrie Campbell. All those guys were actually recruited by the former staff. So now those guys are leaving. So now it's time for Dan Mullen and company's class to step up. So that's the big question now moving forward is how can these guys improve? What do these guys look like? What does a full Dan Mullen squad do? And obviously the other question too is, will there be changes on the defensive side of the ball? That's certainly something that Gator Nation wants to know.
For a third consecutive year, Dan Mullen moves his Gators on into the New Year's Six Bowl. arena, first against Michigan, Virginia last year in an Orange Bowl win, and this time against Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl. We got Jackie Franchuli on the line from allgators.com on SI. So in regards to, you mentioned Kyle Trask, the thought process out there was generally that if one quarterback dominated in the SEC championship game and won the game, especially if it was Mr. Trask, then they were most likely the Heisman front runner. He wasn't able to pull that off, but certainly the blame of this loss not at his feet. 408 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in 40 pass attempts against the Tide, but not necessarily given the Heisman love that you would think he would be, since he's been generally in that front running status most of the season, Jackie.
Yeah, and those that follow me on Twitter have known that I've been pretty vocal this week in saying that Kyle Trask, I feel, has been disrespected on a national by national analysts and maybe national media who haven't seen him week in and week out. And it's not like I'm saying he's the outright winner of the Heisman that I think should win. I honestly probably would have voted for Devontae Smith. But I think when you mention a quarterback in that group, I think it is wrong for you not to mention Kyle Trask. I think this whole thing, for me anyway, started when ESPN put out a graphic and Kyle Trask was not included. Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones were. And I think when you're looking at a Heisman winner, you know, there are words that you want to see in your Heisman winner: impactful, perseverance. And Kyle Trask was a backup quarterback, a 3-star recruit that persevered and stick to his high school program and then to his college program and fought his way to a starting position. And then you talk about making an impact. Imagine this Florida offense without Kyle Trask. I know a lot of people might point, well, Emory Jones is a dual threat quarterback, fits Dan Mullen's offense a little bit better. Sure, but look at all the tight windows that Kyle Trask was able to throw in. Look at all those throws that he was able to take advantage of Kyle Pitts' athleticisms by throwing in those tight windows so that Pitts can go up and beat those one-on-one matchups. And I think that's something that he doesn't get enough credit for, is that when Kyle Trask throws the ball, he is allowing his wide receivers to make the plays, like Kyle Pitts, which is why they missed them so much against LSU, because you didn't have that guy like Kyle Pitts. And I think Kyle Trask has that ability to do that. And, you know, he has made a big impact. And considering that the right side of Florida's offensive line has had a few you can have to criticize that side. They're very susceptible. A lot of the times Kyle Trask is pressured from that side. And then Florida doesn't have an effective running game. You know, we've talked about it on the show. It seemed like Dan Mullen, you know, wanted the run game to kind of flourish a bit, but it just, you know, when you have a passer like Kyle Trask, you're going to go for him. But when your run game just fails to get any momentum, you're going to rely on Kyle Trask. So people who are playing Florida realize they're going to throw the ball. So you just think of how much those stats that Kyle Trask was able to amass when players know what he's going to do. We know what Florida's going to do with Kyle Trask on their center. So there's a lot of things when you look at that you think, yes, Kyle Trask's numbers are high, and you're going to say, well, maybe, you know, Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence didn't pass as much. That's why their numbers aren't as high. But at the same time, Mac Jones also has a Heisman contender at running back. Trevor Lawrence plays against teams that one can argue that isn't at the highest caliber compared to the SEC, because don't forget, Kyle Trask played in 11 SEC games. So now you're arguing strength of schedule. You're arguing the team aspect of this, because don't forget, yes, the Heisman is the individual award. And although, you know, his team does have 3 losses, again, it's individual award. He has made the most impact on his team. You know, has been several Heisman winners and didn't win the national title. Lamar Jackson comes to mind. He didn't even win his bowl game, but he made an impact on his team. And that's where I think Kyle Trask at least should be in the conversation. And I don't think he has had that moment in the conversation that much. I feel like he has a little bit of a say. But they've been focused a lot more on Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones as quarterbacks. Even Justin Fields got snuck into that conversation, but I think that has died down. So that's I feel like Kyle Trask deserves a little bit more. And even now he's been named to the second team All SEC team. And I'm thinking, why is Mac Jones in the first team SEC team when Kyle Trask has made more of an impact at his position than a Mac Jones.
Yeah, you certainly cite guys in the past who have been given Heisman consideration, won the award without playing for championship contenders nationally. Most of the ones recently, though, that's been the exception, or that's been the rule, I should say. But down through the history of the Heisman, tons of guys have lost 3 and 4 games. Tim Tebow, certainly in 2007, in between the championship seasons that Florida actually won the Heisman in the year that Florida went to 9 and 4. And Kyle Trask, again, it's not that it's a cut and dry, but in regards to numbers, and if you just put all the thought and the narratives and the bullet points that you just put together, Jackie, in regards to schedule and the workload on the offense that's put on his shoulders, and all those factors taken into consideration, Trevor Lawrence missed 2 of Clemson's biggest games against Notre Dame, and also a would-be loss against Boston College, to take that into play as well. Got Jackie Franchuli on the line from allgators.com on SI. And so outside the college football playoff, as I mentioned off the top, this may be the marquee matchup of the bowl season, taking on an Oklahoma team that Florida, of course, beat as a program to win its most recent national championship in 2008, this time at the Cotton Bowl. Do you think the Gators are going to be motivated for this one?
That's the question I actually had. This is a team that thought that they had enough to win at least a spot in the college football playoffs. The LSU loss hit them hard, and the Alabama game hit them harder because they were so close, and it was mental errors and their own mistakes. The last 2 games, it was their own mistakes that cost them games. That would affect you mentally. And then when you see that Kyle Pitts has already opted out, and we're waiting for possibly 2 more or 3 more, according to Dan Mullen, to announce that they will be opting out, you're thinking, okay, I have a feeling that some of these opt-outs are going to be on the defense side of the ball. But at the same time, you're thinking Kyle Pitts is such a player that you're going to miss. You're going to miss Kyle Pitts. Kyle Trask has come out and says he is almost certain going to be playing. So you're going to have your quarterback, but Kyle Pitts out. We noticed what happened against LSU. I still think whenever this is a competitive team, and all competitors are going to want to win games, but this season is just so different. This season is long. This 2020 season, they've played so many consecutive games in a row. This is their first break since that COVID outbreak. Imagine playing all those weeks, and this is your first official break. They're mentally and physically tired. It's a game that I can't say they'll be motivated, but I don't know how much of their mind is going to be in this game. They're competitors always, so I'm not going to say they're completely going to be out of it. They're not going to be completely unmotivated. But this is sort of a game that, after I would be saying the same thing after a bye week, except this time you've got what is it, like 8 games in a row for them almost here. That is, for 8 games in a row, that's physically exhausting, mentally exhausting. And 2020 has been exhausting for me, and I didn't play football. So I think that's the one thing. And plus, when you have Oklahoma, this could possibly be an offensive showdown. Who needs defenses in this game? So it could be an exhausting game, and it could be who has enough left in the tank, really, in this game.
And considering that conjecture about the motivation involving the Gators, there seems to be some motivation there for James Houston to play well, and for Oklahoma in turn to play well, because Houston fired out some shots heard around college football nation concerning the SEC against the Big 12. And this is always a talking point when the conferences get together during bowl season. How relevant are the games in terms of trying to rank and rate the conferences against each other? And the SEC has been considered king, and the results would back that up. But not necessarily I'd have to run the numbers against the Big 12 if they've been dominant. But this is a game that at least Houston said that, that the SEC is superior to the Big 12.
Yes. Talk about bulletin board material for Oklahoma. I think Dan Mullen and Grantham, and then maybe have a little talking to James. But honestly, that Florida has always been a team that has had a few moments in the quote room. I remember Kyrie Campbell a few years ago had one, and I certainly remember Quincy Wilson's have you ever seen a duck pull a truck comment right before that Tennessee matchup where they lost. So yeah, I certainly they're no strangers to that. And I think that's not just the Florida team that, there's a lot of trash talking. When you talk about the Big 12 and the SEC, they always trash talk each other previously because the SEC is not known to being the offensive power that or just about the offense. It's about the defense too, and that battle in the trenches. While the Big 12 is always, SEC jokes that you don't play defense. Well, with all the stuff that happened in 2020 and the defense wasn't able to have that spring and all those times for them to have those important practices to tackle, well, the defenses are struggling. Even Alabama's defense under Nick Saban, he's come out and said several times that he feels like his defense is not playing to their potentials and they're doing sloppy errors. And a lot of that has to do with how 2020 kind of has shaped up with the schedule. So this is going to be an interesting game just because of all the narratives going in. You have obviously the comment from James Houston, but you also have the comments from both fan bases for years now. It's that SEC versus Big 12 rivalry, that just the opinion that Big 12 doesn't play much defense. And Florida has been pretty prolific on offense and defense. They've struggled. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. And I'm sure Dan Mullen didn't appreciate the bulletin board material because especially after Mullen himself was taken out of context a bit prior to Alabama and his quote. So he probably didn't want another quotable material out there before a game.
Jackie Franchuli's on the line from allgators.com on SI to help us break down Florida football. The Cotton Bowl's next week against Oklahoma. National Signing Days in the rearview mirror, at least the first initial stop, with February coming, of course. Jackie, your thoughts about a recruiting class that Rivals has ranked 8th in the nation, number 5 in the SEC, with a 5-star and 12 4-stars.
Yeah, Florida had a drama-free, no worry, no unexpected outcome signing day. Everyone who was expected to sign, signed. We had no late drama, no late, they're going to flip. I think a lot of it has to do that Florida really benefited from the 2020 recruiting cycle and how they weren't allowed to take official visits. I know people are like, why? How can they benefit? Well, they were able to keep kids in state because some of these kids weren't able to take official visits out of state. A lot of these kids in the state of Florida, can't afford to go to Clemson for unofficial visits. They have to wait until the schools are able to pay for those official visits. So guys like, Corey Collier, he was on Florida's campus for a 7-on-7 tournament, not this past summer, but the summer previously. So a lot of these in-state kids have been able to visit Florida before the pandemic hit. So Florida was able to keep a lot of the guys that they wanted in state and keep guys like Alabama and Auburn and Clemson away from them because they weren't able to visit those guys for official visits. And any recruit visits. So I feel like they've benefited from that a lot. And they benefited also because what they were able to do for these recruits is show that they're playing well on the field. All that has helped them. And they were able to sign 22 really good players that fit their system. I still think they have to improve a little bit on the recruiting trail. And I think that's something a lot of people will say, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they sometimes, lack they're able to bring in guys on the transfer portal, like DeMarcus Bowman is finally coming to Florida, but he was a guy that they shouldn't have leave the state in the first place, in the first go around. But they were able to sign a couple of good guys. Obviously, when you look on the defensive side of the ball, they were able to sign, Corey Collier, Jason Marshall, a 5-star, Tariq Stapp, all great South Florida defensive backs. They all signed. Marshall could honestly have an instant impact. He had really great numbers in 2019. He's like what I would define as a lockdown corner. Collier, I already mentioned, he's another really talented defensive back. I remember watching him in that 7-on-7 tournament, and he was definitely one of the players that stood out. And I think, what they did too is to keep those guys, those blue bloods out there like Alabama and Auburn, away from a guy like Jeremiah Williams, nicknamed Scooby, because he likes sack snacks. So I think he's also one that to keep an eye on. I think he's not going to be one that we keep think that he's going to play really early. But he's one that I feel like can develop in a really great player for them. You're going to have other guys like in the linebacker group that joins Williams, like Chief Borders and Daewon Black. And Daewon Black is probably one that I think warrants just a huge congratulations for what he's done. Don't forget, he signed with Florida a few years ago, but couldn't qualify, went the JUCO route, got himself qualified, continued to play, and signed with the school he initially wanted. That takes a lot of perseverance. It takes a lot of hard work. And he's a very talented guy. He's going to be a very big asset to Florida, not only on the field, but a guy that you can use on the recruiting trail for official visits. A guy that, he said, hey, the staff was loyal to me. And this is, I fought my way to come to Florida. This is why. He was also an excellent recruiter for his class, too. And I think the guys that we're going to keep an eye out more is the defensive tackles. When you look at Florida's defensive tackle recruitment, they're in a little bit of a trouble there. That's something that started with the former staff. They didn't do a lot of balancing of classes where they missed out on a couple of years of recruitment, and they went from like veterans to Jalen Humphreys, which is a young underclassman, and they're gonna have a couple growing pains in that position. The good thing is they have a big guy in Desmond Watson, which I remember Mullen said he was a 385-pound athlete. And that's because Watson told Mullen that he lost a little bit of weight. He's a guy that you might want to keep an eye on, especially when he comes in and gets under Nick Savage's program. I think we saw what Ethan White was able to accomplish. He was close to 400 pounds when he got here. He lost around 60, 70 pounds in his first year. So he's a guy that we can possibly see that if he can get into Nick Savage's program, be a guy that could make an impact. And also Chris Thomas, another DT that was that signed as well. That's a guy that I feel could make some sort of an impact, just because that's the position where we go like, okay, where's the position where they don't have that much depth at, and that is the position that we're going to see. And I think they picked up some great talent at quarterback with obviously Jalen Kitna and Carlos Del Rio. So they had an overall good class. I think the defense, I give it more to the defensive side as far as recruiting. They basically recruited a whole defensive team. So that was a good, strong defensive class. Moving forward, they need to work on that O-line, and I think that's something that everyone says. They need to establish good depth at the O-line and good quality depth, guys that can make an impact relatively early. You generally want a redshirt O-lineman. You generally want to get them at least a full year on a team before starting them, but you want to have that ability to have them available pretty quickly. All ended. But so I think they had a really good, solid class.
Jackie Franchuli talking up the Gators here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please comment down below, share the videos on social media, subscribe right here, hit that bell for the notifications, and when we're going live. Jackie, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark.